Step into reading Step 4 The Great Houdini, World Famous Magician and Escape Artist. Chapter 1 Every summer, the circus came to Appleton, Wisconsin. 9-year-old Rick Weiss loved the acrobats and the magicians. He wanted to be a performer. I will call myself the Prince of the Air, he told his brother Theo. Eric made a trapeze out of the broomstick and two ropes. His mother sought him a costume. He looked like a real acrobat. Soon he was ready for his first performance. The neighborhood kids gathered to see the show. Eric and Theo had made a stage. An old sheet was used as a curtain, and Rick ran out from behind the curtain. He grabbed the trapeze and began to swing back and forth. He stood on his hands. He hung by his knees. Then it was time for his best trick. Theo stuck needles in the ground. Eric swung over the needles. He picked up every single one with his eyelids. Eric Weiss was born in Budapest, Hungary in 1974. Soon after, the whole family moved to America. His father was a rabbi. He didn't make enough money to feed his large family. Eric and his brothers did odd jobs to earn money. Eric ran errands, sold newspapers, and shined shoes. He decided to quit grade school. In those days, there were no laws to make children stay in school, and Rick needed to help his family. He got a job in a locksmith shop. Eric learned to take locks apart and put them back together. He also learned to open locks by using a pick made of wire. Soon he could open any lock in the shop without a key. Chapter 2 Eric was fascinated with magic. He read every book on magic he could find. He learned coin and card tricks. He even learned how to escape after being tied up with rope. One of Eric's favorite books was about French magician Jean-Eugène Robert Houdin. Eric was thinking of him when he made up his stage name. He added an I to Houdin. Then he changed his nickname Harry into Harry, and so Harry Houdini was born. While still in their teens, Harry and Theo put together a magic show. They called themselves the Brothers Houdini. They pulled coins and cards out of thin air. They turned a candle flame into a handkerchief. Harry practiced his hand movements for hours on end. Quicker than the eye can see, he told Theo. The brothers Houdini always saved the best trick for last. It was called metamorphosis, which means change. Harry would change into Theo. Harry tied Theo in a sack. Then he locked him in a trunk. He placed a curtain in front of the trunk. Harry went in behind the curtain. At the count of 3, the audience saw Theo move the curtain and Harry jump out of the trunk. The trick was so quick, people could not guess how they did it. They took their act on the road and ended up in New York City. Harry and Theo got a job performing at an amusement fair on Coney Island. Here Harry met Bess Runner. She was performing in a song and dance act with her sister. Harry and Bess fell in love. They were married in 1894. Bess took Theo's place in the act. It was the end of the brothers Houdini. Theo went on performing as a solo magician. He called himself Houdini, but he never became as famous as his brother. Chapter 3 Harry and Bess struggled for years to find work. Finally, the Walsh brothers' circus in Pennsylvania gave them a 6-month contract. The Houdinis put together some new tricks. They added touches to their famous metamorphosis illusion. Harry entered the trunk handcuffed. Bess emerged from the trunk wearing Harry's coat. Harry's ability to pick locks came in handy for handcuff escapes. He also knew that some cuffs opened when they were hit on a hard surface. He tied a piece of metal to his knees, hidden under his pants. When he smacked the cuffs against the metal, the cuffs magically snapped open. Soon handcuff tricks were a regular part of Houdini's act. He always escaped easily, but the audience never seemed amazed. "I don't get it," said Harry to Bess one day. "I'm locked up tighter than Fort Knox, and I bust out in seconds. I make it look easy." "Maybe it looks too easy," replied Bess. From then on, Houdini did the handcuffs escapes inside a cabinet with only his head showing. He took his time. He groaned and sweated and strained. Then he burst out waving the cuffs. The audience went wild. Now they loved seeing Houdini break free. Houdini added a straitjacket escape to his act. A straitjacket has very long sleeves. It is put on backward. The arms are crossed in front and tied behind. A belt is buckled around the waist. The escape was hard work. Houdini had to undo the buckle from inside. He had to get the sleeves over his head. For almost anyone else it would have been impossible, but not for the great Houdini. Once the straitjacket escape took Houdini over an hour. He rolled all over the floor. He jerked and wrestled with the jacket. When he was finally free, Houdini's body was bruised and sore. "The pain and agony of that struggle will live forever in my mind," he said later. Houdini spent up to 8 hours a day working on new escapes, but no matter how hard he worked, Houdini was not yet a star, and that's what he wanted most of all. In 1900, Houdini bought 2 steamship tickets. He and Bess were bound for England. They hoped this move would bring the stardom Houdini was seeking. Chapter 4. Houdini and Bess didn't know anyone in London. They had no bookings. They had only enough money to last them 1 week. Houdini went to every theater looking for work. Finally, C. Dundas Slater, the manager of London's best music hall, booked a Houdini for a week. But soon they were out of work again. There were too many handcuff escape artists in England. Now, if you could break out of cuffs from Scotland Yard, Slater told Houdini, "I could give you steady work." Houdini never let a challenge go by. He was ready and willing to try. Scotland Yard was the headquarters of the London police. Criminals knew that it was impossible to break out of a jail cell in Scotland Yard or to crack the cuffs that were used. But Houdini knew what the 2 keys could open most British cuffs, and he owned both of them. Houdini was handcuffed to a stone pillar inside a cell. He was checked for hidden keys, but the police could not find any. Houdini had hidden the key where no one would think to look. He had swallowed it and was holding it in his throat. "You won't be going anywhere, I'm sure," said Superintendent Melville as he closed the door with a smile. But Melville was wrong. In seconds, the handcuffs clattered to the floor. Houdini was free. It was unbelievable. The Houdinis got a 6-month booking. The show sold out every night. The Houdinis became the talk of London. When the 6 months were up, Houdini got work in Paris, France. He came up with a dangerous stunt to get people's attention. He would jump into the river saying, "Handcuffed." A large crowd gathered. Handcuffs were locked on Houdini. His wrists were chained. 2 men helped him climb a ladder to the highest pillar on the bridge. Houdini balanced on top of the pillar. Suddenly he threw himself into the muddy river. The waters closed over him. Seconds went by. The crowd held its breath. Then Houdini popped up, waving the cuffs. He had done the impossible once again. Houdini and Pass toured Europe for 5 years. Their shows became more and more popular. When he came back to America, Houdini was world famous. Chapter 5. Houdini bought a huge house in New York City. It had 2 rooms just for his library. He had over 5,000 books on magic. Houdini was a big star now. He took his show across the country. He toured from Boston to New Orleans to San Francisco. In those days, there was no television. Today, when a magician such as David Copperfield goes on TV, he becomes famous overnight. It took Houdini years and years of traveling and performing all over the world to become famous. Houdini was not the only escape artist touring the country. He needed to keep his show exciting. He wasn't going to be second to anyone. Houdini came up with a new underwater stunt. He called it the water torture cell. A glass cabinet full of water stood on the stage. It looked like a phone booth. Houdini's ankles were locked into a wooden brace. He was then lowered into the water, upside down. The cabinet was locked with a steel lid. A curtain was pulled in front. 3 minutes later, Houdini was free, but the cabinet was still locked. How did he do it? The water torture cell escape was Houdini's most famous stunt. He never told anyone how he did it. He liked to keep his secrets to himself. Chapter 6. Houdini had never kept himself in great physical shape. But now he was over 40 years old. The escapes were getting harder to do. He began to put magic tricks back into his act. But these illusions were bigger than the ones he used to do. Houdini's biggest magic trick of the time was the vanishing elephant trick. He performed it for the first time in 1918 in New York City. "Ladies and gentlemen," Houdini shouted, "please welcome Jenny." Jenny, the 10,000-pound elephant, trumped into the ring. She wore a wristwatch on her left hind leg. 15 men wheeled out an 8-foot square cabinet. It was big enough to hold an elephant. Jenny was led into the cabinet. Houdini pointed at the watch on her back leg. "Jenny keeps good time," he told the audience. "She will vanish in 2 seconds." The doors were closed. Houdini counted to 2. He opened the doors. Presto! The cabinet was empty. Jenny had vanished into thin air. The audience loved this wonderful trick. It became one of Houdini's most famous illusions. Houdini still performed a few of his old escapes. One was the Straitjacket Escape, but with an added twist. Houdini took the stunt outdoors. He performed this hanging upside down from the outside of a building, 45 feet above the street. Houdini stopped traffic with this stunt. Thousands of people jammed the streets to watch. Once, a high wind slammed Houdini into the side of a building. He was badly bruised. Houdini's daring escapes brought him near death more than once. Many people thought it was only a matter of time before an attempted escape took his life. Soon, Houdini would meet his death, but not in the way people imagined. Chapter 7. In the fall of 1926, Houdini was performing in Montreal, Canada. Two students came to his dressing room. One had heard that Houdini was strong enough to take any punch. Before Houdini could prepare himself by clenching his muscles, the student hit him hard in the stomach several times. Houdini was in severe pain. At the evening show, he was in a cold sweat. His temperature was high. In Detroit the next day, Houdini went to a doctor. The doctor told him his appendix had to be removed. After the operation, Houdini grew even sicker. He had an infection. Houdini should have cancelled his show, but he didn't. That night, he went on stage with a temperature of 104. After the first act, he collapsed backstage. Houdini was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. He was dying. Houdini had challenged death many times. He was used to winning, but this time he would lose. Houdini died in the hospital on October 31st, Halloween. His body was sent back to New York City. It was sent in the bronze coffin Houdini had planned to use in his buried alive escape. Newspapers all over America carried the story of Houdinis death. 2,000 people attended his funeral. Outside, thousands more jammed the streets. There would never be another magician like Houdini. Many believed he had superhuman powers, but Houdini always told them, "There is a trick to everything I do." Perhaps Houdini's greatest trick was becoming who he was. He was born into a poor family. He was uneducated, but through hard work and determination, he became the world's most famous magician and escape artist. Houdini wrote books, starred in movies, and was the president of the Society of American Magicians. Once reporters asked Bess if she knew the secret of Houdini's success, she replied, "It is Houdini himself. That is the secret." Bye! If you liked my story, subscribe this channel.